Don't ignore this moment. You didn't get here by accident. Among millions of videos, among thousands of distractions, something inside you decided to stop here. And when that happens, there is almost always a deeper reason than it seems. Perhaps you woke up today with a feeling that's hard to explain, a mixture of tiredness, and that quiet feeling that something in your life should be moving faster than it is. You've done your part. You've waited. You've been patient. But sometimes it seems that the sky is silent, as if your efforts went unseen, as if your path was stopped. If that feeling lives inside you right now, then this moment deserves your full attention, because there are stages in life where the invisible is reorganizing the visible. Moments where what seems like a delay is actually preparation. And today we're going to talk about something that very few people understand. An ancient spiritual principle, a simple practice, but profoundly powerful. The conscious activation of destiny through spiritual repetition, sevenfold, not superstition. But because the number 7 has always represented completeness, the closing of cycles, and the opening of new paths. Today you will understand why. And perhaps, as you finish this message, many pieces of your life will begin to make sense. Before we continue, do something simple. Take a deep breath. Inhale slowly through your nose. Hold your breath for a few seconds and exhale slowly. Do it again, as you breathe. Allow your mind to calm down. You don't need to prove anything now. You don't need to run. Thus, listen. Because when the spirit is still, that's when clarity appears. Many people believe that the spiritual life is only about fast-forward moments, doors opening, opportunities arriving, clear paths. But those who have traveled a deep path know something different. Before every real breakthrough, there is always a period of apparent silence, a time when things seem to move slowly, where answers are slow, where even faith can feel weary, not because something is wrong, but because something is being reorganized behind what is visible. Think about the soil before a seed sprouts dots from the outside. It seems like nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, everything is working. Roots seeking direction, invisible forces aligning. And when the time is right, the outbreak appears not by chance, but because everything was ready many times. Life works exactly like that. That period when you felt forgotten, that moment when you thought you were stuck, that time when your efforts seemed to go unanswered. It was not abandonment, it was silent preparation. Perhaps in recent months you have felt some of these things. A strange feeling of closure, people drifting away from your life, situations that once seemed safe are changing, a deep tiredness that is not just physical, as if your spirit were going through a transition. If any of this resonates with you, don't ignore it, because often before a new stage begins, life cleans the space, remove what no longer belongs, disrupt the old so that the new can enter. And although it may feel confusing from the inside, from a higher perspective, it's alignment. Now we come to a simple practice that many spiritual traditions have used for centuries. Conscious repetition. But not just any repetition. A repetition with intention, with presence, with quiet faith. Why 7 times? Because 7 symbolizes a complete cycle, day 7. Rest and closing. 7 steps before a conquest. 7 moments to seal an inner decision. When you repeat a spiritual phrase 7 times, something interesting happens. Your mind begins to calm down. Your breathing becomes regular, that your approach changes. And little by little, the mental noise gives way to something different. Inner clarity. It's not magic, it's alignment. Your mind, your emotion, and your intention working in the same direction. And when that happens, your perception of life changes. Opportunities you didn't see before are starting to appear. Decisions become clearer. Confidence returns. That's why today I invite you to experience something simple, but do it calmly, do it with intention. The sentence is this: I am ready to receive what has already been prepared for my path. You don't need to say it out loud if you don't want to. You can repeat it silently. But when you do it slowly, with calm breathing, carefully, because each repetition is like knocking on an inner door. And sometimes you just need to knock a few times for that door to open. For a long time, many people have interpreted waiting times as signs that something is wrong. But in the deep spiritual life, exactly the opposite occurs. Pauses are often moments of alignment, moments where what you don't yet see begins to take shape. And if you look at your life honestly, perhaps you can recognize that the most important changes never started loudly. They didn't arrive with announcements. They didn't arrive with immediate certainties. They started with something quieter, an inner feeling, a small glimmer of clarity, a quiet intuition that said something is changing. That type of exchange is the most powerful because it comes from within. And when the inner change occurs, the outer world inevitably begins to move. But here's something important that many people overlook, that the human spirit needs to consciously participate in that process. That not from pressure, not from anxiety, but from presence. And one of the oldest ways to participate in that invisible movement is through conscious speech. The words you repeat with intention. Little by little, begin to reorganize your inner self. They don't change the world overnight, but they do change something very important. Your stance towards the path. And when your posture changes, your perception changes. And when your perception changes, the decisions you make also change. This is how news cycles begin. Not like a sudden stroke of luck. Rather, it's a series of small alignments that end up building a new chapter. Now think for a moment. How many times have you silently repeated thoughts like these? I'm tired. I don't know if this is going to change. Perhaps, nothing will change. Those thoughts are understandable. All human beings have them at some point. But it is also true that the human mind learns by repetition. What is repeated many times ends up forming paths within our way of thinking. That's why spiritual repetition works, because it introduces a new inner path. A path that reminds us of something that tiredness sometimes makes us forget. Life is not solely driven by what we see today, but also because of what is being silently prepared now. I want to invite you to do something very simple, but very powerful. In a moment, I will ask you to participate with a sentence, not as an obligation, but as a conscious gesture, a small act of presence. But first, let's take another break. Take a deep breath. Release the tension in your shoulders. Allow your body to relax. Imagine for a moment that the weight of your worries lessens a little. Just a little. You don't need to solve everything today. You just need to be here. Now, recall the phrase we mentioned earlier. I am ready to receive what has already been prepared for my path. This phrase is not an attempt to control the future. It does not try to demand results. It simply expresses something very profound. Call on availability for what's to come. Willingness to recognize new opportunities. Availability to walk when the next step appears. When you repeat this phrase 7 times, you are sending a clear message to your own spirit. A message that says, I'm open. I'm palin. Attention. Attention. I'm ready to walk when the time comes. And that arrangement changes something important. The way you look at your life. Because when someone believes that nothing will change, they stop looking around. But when someone opens up their inner self again, he begins to notice small signs of direction. Small coincidences. Timely conversations. Ideas that appear at unexpected moments. That's not magic, it is awakened consciousness. Now I want to invite you to actively participate in this moment. If you feel this message arrive just when you needed it, if something inside you recognizes these words, then write this simple phrase in the comments. I'm ready for the new cycle. It's not just a comment, it's a conscious gesture. One way to mark this moment as a starting point, and it's also a way of remembering that you're not walking alone. Thousands of people go through similar processes, moments of transition, moments where silence becomes preparation. And when many people declare together that they are ready to move forward, something beautiful is created. A community of quiet hope. People who keep walking, even when the path is not yet fully visible. Now, I want to tell you something important before we continue. You don't need to have all the answers today. You don't need to understand every detail of your process. That life rarely reveals the whole map at once. It usually only shows the next step, and that next step becomes clearer when the mind stops fighting against time. When the heart learns to trust the process again, and when the spirit remembers something fundamental. Each stage of preparation has a purpose, even those that seemed confusing. Because many times, the time you thought you were wasting, it was a time that was making you stronger, preparing your character, clarifying your direction, teaching you to recognize what's truly worthwhile when the next chapter arrives. And that chapter often begins silently with an inner decision, with a phrase repeated calmly with a brief moment of quiet faith. Therefore, in the next part of this message, let's make a final decree together, a simple prayer, a moment to seal this instant as a new inner beginning, and when with perhaps you will discover that something inside you has already begun to stir. Now there are moments in life where everything seems to be on pause, the days go by, but the answers don't come as quickly as you expected. The questions remain, decisions appear to be suspended, and the heart in silence wonders if the path is really moving. However, those who have traveled a deep spiritual path understand something that is not easy to accept at first. Now the most important movement almost always happens before we can see it, not like roots that grow underground, like the dawn that begins long before the light appears on the horizon. First, the invisible happens. Then, what is visible? And if you look closely at your own history, you will probably discover that the moments you consider most significant today began exactly like this. In silence, with uncertainty, not with questions, but also with a small inner voice that said, keep moving forward. That calm voice is important because it's the one that brought you here, through stages that seemed confusing, through changes you didn't always understand, through moments where patience was more necessary than certainty. If you are listening to this entire message today, there is something that deserves to be acknowledged. You kept walking, even when not everything was clear, even when tiredness set in, even when life seemed to move slower than you expected. That is also part of spiritual growth. It's not about moving forward without doubts. It's about continuing despite them. And now we come to an important moment in this meeting, a moment of conscious decree, not like a magic formula, not as an immediate promise of external changes, but rather as an internal act of alignment, moment where you decide to make room for the new. If you can, take a deep breath, inhale slowly, allow the air to fill your lungs, and when you exhale, let go of some of the weight you've been carrying. You don't need to charge everything at the same time. Now, calmly, let's declare something together. You can repeat these words in a low voice or inside your mind. The important thing is that you do it intentionally with presence, with the serenity of someone who trusts that each stage has its purpose. Repeat slowly. I accept the process that has shaped my path. Breathe. I recognize that each stage has had a purpose. Breathe again. I am ready to walk into the next chapter of my life. Lu. Those words to settle within you. You don't need to force anything. Just let the meaning sink in. Because when someone recognizes the value of their process, something very important happens. Resistance decreases, clarity increases. And the spirit begins to perceive with greater accuracy the right moment to move forward. We often think that change will come when the outside world transforms first. But in reality, the most profound change usually begins here, in a quiet moment like this, in a silent decision, in a moment where you choose to look at your story not as a series of setbacks, but as a path of learning. That change in perspective may seem small, but it has a powerful effect because it transforms the way you look at the future. Instead of asking yourself if something good will happen, you start to wonder what new chapter is being prepared. And that question opens up space for hope, that a serene hope, without anxiety, no pressure. Only the quiet confidence that life continues to unfold. Now, before we say goodbye, I want to invite you to do something else. If this message accompanied you during an important moment, if you felt that these words came when you needed to hear them, write this phrase again in the comments. I'm ready for the new cycle. It's not just a phrase. It's a way of marking this moment as a point of awareness, a reminder for your own path, and also a sign for other people who are going through similar processes. Because when someone reads that phrase, they understand that they are not alone on their journey, that many are learning to trust the process of life. And if you wish to continue receiving messages like this, reflections to help you maintain clarity, calm, and spiritual direction. You can subscribe and stay close to this community. A community made up of people who value inner growth. People who understand that life doesn't always move fast, but it can always move with purpose. Before we end this meeting, keep this idea in your heart. Just because something is taking time doesn't mean it's stopped. Often it means that it is forming more deeply. And when something is formed deeply, it also has the capacity to be sustained with greater stability. Your story is not on pause. Your process is not stopped. Perhaps it's simply going through the quiet stage where the pieces fall into place. And when the time is right, the next step will become clearer than you imagine. Until then, breathe, trust, and he continues walking calmly. The path always reveals itself to those who keep moving forward with an open heart.